Well, welcome to our Spring Sustainability Seminar Series. I'm Kishore Rajagopalan, Associate Director at the Center here. For those of you who are new or joining us over the web, the mission of the Center is to promote sustainable practices, reduce pollution, and enhance human and environmental health, with a primary focus in the manufacturing and industrial space. We are one of 5 surveys organized within the Training Research Institute. The Institute, through its integrated, objective research, seeks to ensure sustainable economic development, enduring environmental quality, and cultural resource preservation for the people, businesses, and governments of Illinois. The goal of this Spring Sustainability Seminar Series is to listen to various perspectives on sustainability-related issues in Illinois, such as environmental protection, energy, and so on. We have encouraged our speakers to articulate their priorities, perceived needs, opportunities, and ongoing work so as to stimulate broader collaboration and to find common ground. I'm pleased to welcome today's speaker, Elmo Dowd, the Associate Director of the Illinois Environmental Protection Agency. Elmo Dowd joined the Illinois EPA in 2006, at which time he was a senior policy advisor in the Associate Director's office. In that capacity, he was the agency's lead outreach person to municipalities and local governments. Elmo has also spearheaded the agency's effort on the River Edge Redevelopment Zone Initiative and has worked to provide communities with an understanding of IEPA programs. He has also served as the Economic Development Administrator for the cities of Rockford, Illinois, and Mankato, Minnesota. He has more than 20 years of experience in local government as well as the private sector. He has a master's degree in public administration from Northern Illinois University and is a past policy fellow at the University of Minnesota's Hubert H. Humphrey Institute of Public Affairs. In 2008, he was named the Associate Director of the Illinois EPA. As Associate Director, he oversees the agency's programs on community relation, outreach and policy, education, environmental justice, local government relations, and pollution prevention. Before we get started, a couple of housekeeping points. Restrooms are in the hallway across the reception and through the door to my right. In case of an emergency, please stand up and follow instructions of John Scott, our safety officer. With that, Elmo, it's all yours. Thank you for coming.
Well, thanks for the kind introduction. And it's my pleasure to be invited to come in and talk to you. You might ask, how does a person with economic development background, local government background, so on and so forth, end up with the EPA? My real background is understanding how cities and communities work, how companies interface with cities and communities, and how various different processes, supply chains, and those type of things come together for communities to make communities viable. The presentation objectives today, one is to provide background information on the agency, to give you an idea of what we do, how we do it, and why we do it. Also, the next is to describe the efforts to incorporate sustainability practices as we look at clean air, clean water, clean land programs, as well as technical assistance and outreach activities, initiatives. Our agency was established as a regulatory agency. So most people thought we were just running around dinging people and beating up on them when they did something wrong. But we do that too. we try to do nice things also. And then we'll maybe get some questions answered that you will have. Our agency developed back in 1970, is the oldest environmental protection agency in the country. We were established prior to the U.S. EPA. We are the only agency outside of the U.S. EPA that can have within our name the Environmental Protection Agency. One of the first things that we were established was under the Clean Water Act. We began our operations July 1, 1970. We have multiple locations. Our headquarters is in Springfield, and that's where our lab is also. But we have regional offices throughout the state. One here in Champaign, of course, and various other different areas you can see right there. Our mission is to safeguard the environmental quality consistent with the social and economic needs of the state, so as to protect health, welfare, property, and quality of life. Our further mission is to make sure that we are good stewards and teach people how to become good stewards as we move forward. And instead of figuring out how to stop people from doing something, to help them do something right. You know, everybody has all these different definitions of sustainability. For us, the key sustainability criteria for our programs is to reduce environmental impacts. When I talk about reducing environmental impacts, it can either be personal things that people do, organizational things that people do, things that affect manufacturing processes. So reducing that environmental impact is a big, big area. Improving the quality of life in communities. You know, having access to clean water, clean air, a clean environment, while at the same time reducing your environmental impact is a mission of ours. It's part of what we do. It's part of our core. To enhance local economic vitality. As part of the definition of a brownfield, it is a potentially economic development use for a piece of property. A brownfield, whether it has real contaminants or perceived contaminants, is an economic development opportunity instead of looking at a greenfield. We work, as an agency, we work with various other different agencies looking at potential economic development growth, economic development activity. We participate. There's not too many manufacturing facilities that can operate without sewer, water, attachments, various other issues along that line. You know, while we regulate that anything that emits anything, you know, so whatever it's emitting, we regulate it. But at the same time, we're always looking at ways how to better things economic development-wise, from your nuclear facilities to your coal-fired facilities, various on and so forth. Another key sustainability criteria is that we want to foster engagement in the decision-making process. You know, for so many years, our decision-making process, as well as US EPA's decision-making process, you would be able to get involved at the end. You know, we would then come out and ask you, what are your concerns? And then we'd move on and go the direction we wanted to go. So, so getting feedback early on as part of our process. And the thing that we're doing now is looking at that feedback in the beginning of the process instead of later on in the process. I'm going to talk about some of the sustainable priorities for the Clean Water Program, the Governor's Clean Water Initiative, the Green Infrastructure Grant Program, well, the Green Infrastructure Program, which has a grant associated with it, and the Illinois Nutrient Reduction Strategy. These are recent things that we have are doing that is going to be really affecting various different things going forward. Our Clean Water Initiative. You know, there are many communities in the state of Illinois, and of the 1,400 communities in the state of Illinois, I've visited about 800 of them. There's many communities out there that have outdated water systems. In some areas, they have water mains that are still wood. Has anybody ever seen a wooden water main, they still exist. You know, the Clean Water Initiative assists local government in updating aging water infrastructure while ensuring safe drinking water and improved wastewater management. Back in September of 2012, the governor announced an additional $1 billion in low-cost loans available to invest in wastewater and drinking water. This was done by using our income stream from our past revolving loan program. Our revolving loan program started in 1989. Actually, it started as a grant program in 1988, but in 1989 it became a loan program. Over the years, the program has provided more than $4.3 billion. If you look at what we put out this past year, it's almost close to $4.9 billion in below-market interest rate loans to more than 472 communities. The funds that we put out is at less than 2%, 20-year money. We're looking at and working with the feds to take that to 30 years. But we're always usually at half the bonding rate, which opens up opportunities for many of the communities out there to access or fix their aging water systems or step up their waste treatment centers. This program is designed to create jobs across, and decrease energy costs for the local governments. The governor just announced an additional $1 billion for this program. So essentially available in funds that we have are available to us, it's going to be about $1.7 billion. Under our normal program, we put out about $300 million a year. That is, we're accelerating that out. But the way we were able to do this, we have had zero defaults on any loan that we've ever made. Let's talk about some of the type of eligible projects. Wastewater, drinking water, sewer relinings. When we talk about inflow and infiltration, enhancing those systems to get rid of that. Combined sewer overflows, where you use an energy to treat into your wastewater system rainwater. Doesn't make sense. The Green Infrastructure Program. Previously, our program did not deal with rainwater unless it was a combined sewer overflow type of activity. We dealt with rainwater under our non-point source pollution grant program, but not under our loan program. This is a new grant. This is a new grant that we created in FY12. It looks at best managed practice to control stormwater runoff that's going into the watershed. Similar to what you had and show me, it uses vegetation and soil to manage rain, where it falls through practices that mimic natural processes. Examples of green infrastructure practices include the permeable pavements, rain gardens, vegetated swells, green rooftops, and rainwater harvesting. If you ever get the chance to go and look at the rain garden on top of Chicago City Hall, it's attached. Chicago City Hall is attached to the county's building. It's a total difference. The total difference in energy usage and so on and so forth, and it's all documented. And as the governor announced that we were a leading state in green roofs and that type of thing. Now, since 2011, we've done about $15 million. It's a reimbursement program, but it's a 15 to 25% match, in which programs like our non-point source pollution program is a 60-40 match. So it's a good program. We put out about 26 to 37 million in the non-point source pollution program, but those are federal funds. These are funds identified by us. This program is scheduled to sunset following the FY14 grant cycle, but depending on how the feedback comes back and how well it's used, this might be something we want to continue. An example would be the Northbrook School District in Cook County. The project goal was to reduce stormwater volume and non-point source pollution to the West Fork of the North Branch Chicago River. As part of this project, best management practices included 31,478 square feet of permeable pavement for both the parking lots and drop-off areas and for various different other activities. They actually put on a close to 3,000 square foot green roof, close to 15,000 square feet of rain gardens, and a dry retention basin with native plantings. The total project cost was $435,000, and there was a 25% match. So essentially the school came up with that 25% match. Our statewide nutrient reduction strategy, we all are feeling the impact of excess nitrogen and phosphorus in Illinois rivers, lake streams, and the Gulf of Mexico. And it's a high-profile issue for the state, as well as other states, but it's a really high-profile issue for the state of Illinois. The state of Illinois has the longest border on the Mississippi River. At least I thought it was. Under the right conditions, nutrients can cause eutrophication of streams and lakes. Are you familiar with eutrophication? Okay, good. Because I wasn't. In research. It promotes excess growth of algae. As algae die decomposing, organisms deplete the water and available oxygen and kills fish. And we see that especially in the past couple of years when it was so dry, and many of the lakes and small ponds were really badly affected. The odor issue on water that has an excess algae, people would think that the water is not safe to drink, but it really might be with further treatment. It also interferes with recreational activities such as swimming and boating. That was a issue, was it last year, where people were asked not to go in the water. People were actually being harmed by the water. The nutrients come from many sources: fertilizers, agricultural, golf courses, residential. Fertilize, keep it green, but it pays consequences. Especially when the stormwater hits, if it's built right, it's going right into the watershed. So that's a potential real source. Erosion of nutrient-rich soils, discharge from industrial and sewage treatment plants, and failing on-site septic systems. I visit with a lot of communities out there that, even though they want to have a central treatment facility for their wastewater, they can't afford it. You can't. You find some of these small communities that the fix is $1 million and there's only 300 residents. The priority watersheds under this program, as you can see, Lake Bloomington, Lake Decatur, so on and so forth, are the ones that are targeted. And you're asking, how did we get to this point of deciding those? In 2013, we launched a collaborative problem-solving process to address excess nutrients. We hosted a meeting on the topic of nutrient pollution and stakeholder groups representing the agricultural community, environmental organizations, academia, technical assistance, dischargers. There was about 100 participants. We partnered with U of I here. There's many players that were involved to conduct scientific assessments that identified baseline nutrient loading current practices, critical watersheds, potential nutrient reductions under various scenarios, and cost estimates for implementation. There's policy working groups that were formed. There's been 6 meetings, 6 work group meetings. There'll be 3 more this spring. We're hoping that the strategy completion will happen by the end of the summer of this year. Looking at sustainable priorities for land protection program, I'm going to talk about the used tire marketing development initiative and greener cleanup programs. We here in Illinois produce more than 12 million used tires on an annual basis. Those used tires are areas where, in terms of habitats for disease-carrying vectors, especially mosquitoes, West Nile is discovered in Illinois every year. The tire fire in Houston, anybody familiar with that? The tire fires at storage and processing facilities, as well as open dumps, contaminate the air, land, and water. We are working on legislation now to control some of that. You know, over the years, the markets for used tires declined, especially over this past 10 years, resulting in an increase in open dumping in environmental justice areas and other areas of the state. Whole tires have been banned from the landfills in Illinois, so alternative methods of disposal are necessary. In 2014, we proposed legislation to reinstate the Illinois Used Tire Market Development Program. It was a program that we had, similar to one we had in the past, but developing an in-chain use, an end-change use, and financing existing monies. And we have the money already out of our used tire program. You know, we want to create a more diverse and stable market for used tires, and place more emphasis on higher use. In the state of California, various other different states incorporate an enormous amount of shredded tires into their roads, into their asphalt. You know, we want to look at more civil engineering applications. I worked on a project when I was in Minnesota that did riprap out of chrome rubber blocks, and it still exists. It didn't wash away. You know, we're looking at the rubberized asphalt pavements. We don't do a lot here in the state of Illinois, but we are looking at it. You know, for cushioning surfaces, there are many areas that back some time ago would use it in playgrounds, various other different things along that line. We're looking at, you know, you can go and get the chrome rubber mats to go around your Christmas trees. You can get them to go around your trees. Various other different applications. They got chrome rubber that you can line your garage floor with. So we're looking at various different areas that can use chrome rubber at a higher use than just burning it or whatever. Under the greener cleanup programs, you know, we're looking at cleaning up contaminated sites using energy, water, and material sources to achieve the remediation objectives. The purpose of the program is to look at sustainable practices and technologies for greener cleanups that minimize the environmental footprint of the cleanup activities itself at the contaminated site. Some of the greener cleanup program components, we developed a matrix. That other sheet that some of you didn't take is this matrix that we've developed of best management practices for the use at site cleanups. It's categorized by air, land, water, and energy impact. If you didn't get one, it was right above the handout that for the PowerPoint. You know, we partnered with ASTI International, which was formerly the Society for Testing Materials, to pilot its standard guide for greener cleanups, and we did this at 4 sites in the state of Illinois. So we were testing to see how we can improve this. Right now we're dealing with the federal greenhouse gas emission guidelines for existing power plants. The greenhouse gas lines for new power plants is still being challenged in the courts. I'm sure if they lose there, this might not do as well. And then we in the attainment zone, which is the Chicago metropolitan area, we have developed an air quality flag program. In 2011, fossil fuel power plants, which is coal, natural gas, oil, were responsible for 33.6% of the total U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. U.S. EPA plans to issue guidelines to regulate greenhouse gas emissions from existing power plants under the Clean Air Act. The proposal comes out June of this year, final 2015, and of course, we're going to implement. The states will implement. So, in developing those guidelines, the President directed the USDA to work with partners and stakeholders and build on state leadership. So we've already had input into the development of the technology through various different agencies or organizations we belong to, and as states ourselves. In Illinois, there's 17 coal-fired plants, and there's a handful of other coal, gas, or diesel-fired plants in the state. Recently, we have created an internal climate action team to get out ahead of the game, and they'll be looking at with sister organizations and various different stakeholders out there. The ICC, DCEO, a development plan to implement the federal emissions reduction. As the conversation goes on, as a state, we want to be ahead of the game instead of having to be pulled into it. So we dictate some of the things that we do. Some of the types of emission reduction approaches that are under consideration at the federal level. The use of statewide compliance approach in addition to plant-by-plant limits. So we look at a cumulative, what a cumulative effect would be. Allow emission reduction measures that can be taken directly by power plants that efficiency improvements as well as beyond the fence line. We're the power plants scream and holler, but we implement and push for the best available practices that are out there. We look at including in-use energy efficiency, appliance efficiency, the improvements, looking at that North Star and renewable energy as part of the process. The state of Illinois itself is one of the largest purchasers of wind energy in the state. So we're looking at renewable energies ourselves. And we're looking at providing credits for early adopters of the greenhouse gas reductions. So things that they're doing now, they'll hopefully get credit for as part of the process. The Air Quality Flag Program, as many of you are aware, emissions in the air quality in the non-attainment zone really affects kids with asthma, elderly people, and those with respiratory and cardiovascular ailments. And at different times, depending on weather conditions, it accelerates or deaccelerates. We are working with the Illinois Partners for Clean Air, and we're looking at recruiting schools and various other different places in the Chicago area to do on a daily basis an air quality flag. And as you can see, the various different colors on that flag represents the level of exposure for that day. This is part of the US EPA's Air Quality Index indicating how clean or polluted the area is, and identifies potential health effects. There are times when we, as an agency, suggest that people don't come outside. You know? And as I say, each different flag color corresponds with the health of the area. So this is a new push for us, and more of an awareness. We realize that if we can get the schools to do it, just like with recycling, it started with the kids. They go home, well, Mom, Dad, you can't throw that there. You know, so we build that educational program from the bottom to the top. Some of the last things I'm going to talk about is the pollution prevention intern program, community digester project, and environmental justice initiative. It's my understanding that y'all are getting a pollution prevention intern here this summer. They have been invaluable over the years. The program started in 1988, and we recruit and train upper-level university students to work in pollution prevention projects during the summer. These students go through a strong training program. They actually, for a week's period of time, industry comes in and works with them and various other different things to prepare them to go out into industry. They go both in, students are typically placed at manufacturing, local governments, some higher ed facilities. We've done stuff in prisons. You know, a student down at SIU Carbondale worked with their power plant and showed them a $350,000 savings. And that's an annual savings. And there was no real drastic thing that was done. It was the tweaking of some of their processes. Over the past 10 years, most of the intern projects have been focused on reducing energy. You know, lighting, motor upgrades, air compressors, and those type of things. Starting this year, the program will place greater emphasis on solid waste, solid and hazardous waste reduction, particularly at facilities that have zero waste programs. We are looking at, you know, as we see industry and we see various different organizations, companies looking at zero waste, we want that to happen. We want to participate in that. And, you know, we lose money by going to zero waste because it's not landfill. We get money from every truck that goes into the landfill, but that's a good thing too, you know. And we look at the life on our landfills, expectancy. Someday, at some point, and we're not creating new landfills, at some point it's going to be full. And we're going to send it up to Michigan. The Community Methane Digester Project. The project goal was to develop a community-based approach to manure management and methane recovery that would be capable of serving multiple dairy farms in a region. Dick is leading that up for us. Right now, we're looking at Clinton County, and there are some 85 dairies, and one of the leading dairy producing. It is one of the leading dairy producing regions in our state. There are 3 dairies located in the western part of the county that are participating in the project. We are actually doing this. As part of the pilot project, we're going to evaluate the financial and technical viability of several anaerobic digester scenarios, including standalone on-farm digesters as well as community systems that could serve 2 to 6 dairies. Benefits of anaerobic digesters, it limits those odors. You know, when you're driving down the highway, you can smell that farm you're coming to. So we hope that will be something that we can look at reducing. It's going to enhance nutrient management, improve air quality, and generate revenue from byproducts. You know, there's all these, you know, I got friends that got great pig farms that don't have digesters, and, you know, they're spreading it underground. That's a loss. There's a potential income stream that's a loss. Project partners include the various different players that you see here. And as with many projects that we do, we reach out to a lot of stakeholders, and, you know, we participate so that we're coming up with the best product we possibly can. Last thing I want to talk about is environmental justice. In our environmental justice program, to give you a simple definition of what environmental justice is, it's that no person, no group, whether by economic, whether by natural origin, color, minority status, should be negatively impacted or receive less equitable share of environmental protection and benefits. That they should be part of the process, and let's stop locating those incinerators in areas that folks can't find it back. Under our EJ program, under the current director and the past director, we have moved to make environmental justice a part of every part, a core of every part of our organization. So everybody is involved with environmental justice. We have moved to make sure that all EPA personnel have a common approach to addressing EJ issues. In the past, if it didn't require a public hearing, we just didn't let people know, And, it would go to public notice. And if you didn't read the public notice, or, then there was an idea to put it out electronically. But if you don't have a computer, then how do you know that either? We wanted to ensure and continuously refine our EJ strategy to ensure that it continues to protect the health of citizens of Illinois and its environment, and promote that environmental equity in the administration of programs in response to the community it serves. We have went to a system where, to whether it is a negative effect or a positive effect, if something is happening in the EJ area, we notify somebody. Give them a chance to get some feedback. And if it is an issue, we go to extra steps, maybe have more public sessions, more public hearings, and give folks a much greater element of involvement. We're in the process of developing a geographic-based computer tool that you can put a piece of property in, and it will tell you whether or not it's in an EJ area and what that EJ area consists of. Then, at that point, we determine what is the next level. We got sued by the Civil Rights Commission, the U.S. EPA Civil Rights Commission, over an incinerator that we had in Fort Park, I believe it was Fort Park, because we didn't go out and do what we should have been doing. We should have did the notification because we knew it was in the EJ area. As part of that settlement, we were required to do an EJ public participation policy with the emphasis on early and meaningful public involvement throughout the permitting process. One of the things that the U.S. EPA is doing or working on doing is involving EJ in the decision-making process at the beginning, and we are doing the same. I spoke just a second ago about our notification procedures, early dialogue opportunities, informational meetings, plan language. Just 2 nights ago, we're down in Wood River, which is where they are starting up a new refinery, or they're starting the one back up, and to meet with the Sierra Club and the company so they could explain what the process was. And it was much better meeting than coming back on the back end and the Sierra Club saying, stop this, we don't know about it. These are various different areas that I've talked about that you can access more information on what I've talked about. So with that said, I'm open.
I'm just curious as to what kind of action have you guys taken with the Mill site here in Champaign, or what regards
Yes, I was actually in some of.
Can you repeat the question? Sorry.
Okay, he's asking. There is an area with Fifth and Hill, called the Fifth and Hill Group, where there was an old coal to gas manufacturer, and Ameren was cleaning up that site. The Fifth and Hill Group, which was an advocate group within the neighborhood, felt they weren't being responded to. We worked both with the company and with the Fifth and Hill Group to enhance outreach to them, to keep them better informed. We had meetings in the neighborhood, with the neighborhood. We had meetings accessible both at night and various other different times to make sure or try to help folks understand what the conditions were. And we approach it from a science perspective. The part of the situation was, if it's in my backyard, it's an emotional situation for me, you know. So us moving forward, we did extra steps as part of our process from an environmental justice perspective. Yes?
Along those same lines, what is the Illinois EPA's position on Asian carp? What's happening in that? It was a hot topic 18 months ago, and it's sort of disappeared from the news.
Oh, it's still out there. I just got through talking with the mayor over in Thompson that they've got a facility over there that's processing Asian carp. And they've got a heavy BOD usage into their wastewater treatment facility. So we're looking for solutions there. As far as coming up the river, it's a continual task force. There's various different suggestions that are still being made out there. It doesn't go away. It doesn't go away. So it hasn't done.
Has anything been done with the Chicago River other than the other one?
Not that I know of. Yes.
I think done with the Fifth and Hill Neighborhood Rights Campaign,
Right.
and about 4 years.
Right.
We haven't been having too much success with the Illinois EPA. I think it's been falling on deaf ears, and I think we're in the process of probably going to the U.S. EPA for a particular problem in the neighborhood. And even though the Ameren site has been cleaned up, I think right outside the boundaries has not been cleaned up. Like the residents in the neighborhood, what we're fighting for, we're not receiving very much help from the EPA. Could you elaborate on that a little bit? Or?
See, what kind of help are you asking for?
Well, we got contamination. We still got our wells that are still overflowing. We got ducks and birds are still dying from the site. We got vapor intrusion that's still coming in through the homes and the basements. We got daycare. We got crisis nursery. We still got residents right around the area. And we know contamination just don't stay in one spot. Over 100 years, it's spread. And we're looking for, people are dying. Folks are having hysterectomies in the early age. We're talking about benzene, arsenic. Another cancer is coming in there, which is known, but the EPA is sort of like a roadblock, like they're protecting the best interest of the city.
Well, we enforce regulations the way the regulations are. We have no emotional ties to any of those things. We have no emotional ties to any of the companies that are out there. I was brought in on the process. I attended some of the meetings. The EJ group is one of my groups. EJ is very important to me, but we follow the rules and regulations. We're stepping up those rules and regulations.
Let me ask you one more question. Have you ever been to the site?
Yes, I have.
Okay.
Would you go back to the previous slide so we could get down some of those internet addresses you have listed there? And and while you're doing that, I'd like to hear you talk a bit more about the green infrastructure program and to mention that there's going to be a sunset on that plan.
Well, right now, when it was
Oh, thank you.
when it was developed, we said we're going to operate it for 3 years. I said when it was developed, we had to get legislation passed to do this, and as part of that, we identified that we're going to do this for 3 years as a pilot, and then evaluate it to see if it's something we want to continue. While we put $5 million into this program, the first year we had applications for more than $30 million. So there's demand out there. But the other side, what we're looking at is looking for legislative approval is under our loan program to start looking at stormwater. So, so something we haven't did in the past. In our loan program, like I said, we got $1.7 billion capacity. So it would be a much greater impact.
So has there been any grant funding from this program in this area?
If you look, I'm not sure. I would assume that it has, but if you go out to that site, it lists every one who received funding on that.
All right, thank you.
Hi. So in light of the tragedy that happened in North Carolina with Duke Energy, with the coal ash pond breach that's looking into the Dan River, I really would like to know what the agency is doing to protect Illinois from, a situation like that happening, especially given that we know that there's water contamination by all of the coal-fired power plants, and specifically in this area, the Dynegy Vermilion power plant has their 3 coal ash ponds are at the middle fork of the Vermilion River, right along the river there. 2 of them are online. So I'd really like to know, in light of that, what is your agency doing to protect us here in Illinois?
Well, I think Dynegy had a proposal out there to move 2 of those ash ponds. That was the last that I heard of it. We understand that they're in the floodplain. As many were developed in the floodplain. We are looking at coal ash across the state, not just in one facility. And that is a high priority with us. If you look at the governor attempted to pass coal ash legislation. The board said no. It's not an emergency. Go through the process. We are going through that process right now. So.
Is my organization been involved in that and working because I'm really even stronger to help protect communities?
Right. So we're not closing a blind eye to it. We are working on it. Green shirt.
From the brownfield redevelopment standpoint, does the EPA have a memorandum of understanding program where if a buyer is interested in a property and is willing to clean it up and sign off, where the EPA will sign off that yes, it's been cleaned up to a certain level, and then if additional contamination is found, they won't hold the new owner liable for previous contamination?
No. What you're talking about is what many folks look at as what's called a letter of comfort.
A letter of what?
Comfort. What a company has to do, or what an organization has to do, is to protect itself. It has to do everything, all things necessary to show that they were not part of the contamination stream. And there is a process out there. In addition to that, many companies are in the same situation that you're talking about. Look at brownfield insurance. You know, and there's a whole insurance industry that will look at that process, and they can buy insurance against if something in the future happens. Because many times a company will come in and say that they're going to do this, this, and this, okay? And maybe the creating of a surface, a parking lot, is part of their plan, you know. Under tiered review, we might potentially let that happen because they're going to stop potential contamination. But then later on, they say, okay, now we're going to expand our building. And something happens and something changes. So, you know, we don't give guarantees that there's never going to be any pollution anymore. And we don't give a guarantee that it's not going to be your responsibility. Yes?
Just have a question about household hazardous waste.
Yes.
And being that there's 4 facilities in the state, but they're all north of Naperville, I'm just
Right.
wondering if there's going to be any funding available for a permanent facility across the state.
We probably won't do a permanent facility, but what we are doing is household hazardous waste collections throughout the state. So if your county wants a household hazardous waste collection done, they can apply to the state and be put on the list. We have done quite a few. We got our funding back on the program, and the first ones that we did were in environmental justice areas. But we're doing them throughout the state. So if your county wants to apply, and we've done multiple counties, so we're still doing that.
Right, I'm aware of the one-day collections.
Right.
Most counties in this area haven't had one for 10 years.
Well, get on the list. Yes.
Could you tell us anything about the Clinton landfill in terms of environmental justice? It looks like that's going to be one of 10 facilities in the United States, apparently sort of permitted to take PCBs. So PCBs are going to be coming from environmental justice areas all over the country to little old Clinton County. Aren't we going to be creating an environmental justice situation there where the county board is being overwhelmed by the lawyers?
Well, let's not misconstrue what environmental justice is. You know, waste will be coming from everywhere to that facility. Whether if the U.S. EPA gives them the permit to accept PCBs, it's not going to be just from poor neighborhoods. You know, so it's not. It does not elevate to an environmental justice issue. So keep that in mind. It becomes. It continues to be that fight on the defense of the aquifer. You know, and right now I think the U.S. EPA has scheduled hearings. And they're at that point. I know that I didn't give you the answer that you wanted.
What I'm wondering is, Clinton County is likely to become an environmental justice area. The way this is working, that's what I'm trying to get at there. This waste is going to come to Clinton County. I mean, to Clinton, the city. It's the Wood County. I'm sorry, I didn't say Clinton County.
I knew what you were talking about. Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you so much for